Wouldn't you like to hear what the candidates who are running for president have to say legitimately about how they feel about issues, rather than being politically correct and hearing the same old hogwash that we've heard for the last 30 years? And what's happened around New York City, Portland, San Francisco, you had district attorneys who didn't know what their job was. And the cities are ruined. People are leaving. That's what happens.
What's going on, guys? So we got to talk about Judge Judy. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out there. Ignore if you hear any rumblings. There's some dummies with motorcycles outside, and they're revving the heck out of them right now. So ignore that if you happen to hear that. But Judge Judy, so she's basically tearing apart this ridiculous hush money trial, okay? She's going in on Letitia James, Alvin Bragg, and the whole farce of a trial with Stormy Daniels. It was totally ridiculous, and I'm glad that it seems like some people still are using common sense, okay? Be you a Democrat or Republican. I mean, it's sad the way that these issues have gone. This is actually one of the reasons why I walked away from the left a long time ago, basically way before this channel started, because I noticed that there was a strong sense of cognitive dissonance. Like if the Democrats were doing something wrong. I remember I asked the dude, hey, do you feel like Democrats have done anything wrong? Like anything at all? Do you ever disagree with Democrats ever? And he said no. That's when I realized this was too cult-like for me. I think I'm gonna bow out of this because I share a lot of conservative values. I have a lot of conservative values today. And those values, I still see conservatives that I don't like. Liz Cheney, Mitt Romney, Lindsey Graham with his old flip-flopping self. I even got some issues with Ted Cruz, and a lot of people love Ted Cruz. I think he's okay. Like, I don't like him all the time. You know what I'm saying? But Judge Judy, she's got some issues too. Before we get into her giving a smackdown to Chris Wallace, I want to show y'all some things she had to say about Nikki Haley in the past.
America deserves better than Donald Trump or Joe Biden. America deserves a leader, a poised, smart, centered, focused, moral leader.
Her verdict is in, and in her opinion, Judge Judy Shineland says she's all in on Nikki Haley.
When you have a candidate like her, who has it all, you have to get out there and put everything else aside.
Nikki Haley, is it part of why you are supporting her because she's a woman?
No, I would support her if she were a frog.
That's cap, and you know it.
Now, that's definitely cap if she's going to try to pretend as though Nikki Haley being a woman had absolutely nothing to do with her choice. I don't think that that is true for a second, because Nikki Haley, in my opinion, was never that strong of a candidate. I think the identity politics is something that people cannot easily remove themselves from. I think that is always going to be a factor, and Judge Judy is just straight up capping, okay, about that issue, because Nikki Haley is a warmonger, and she has some things that may make her a very bad candidate that were very obvious and were pointed out constantly by everybody, including Donald Trump himself, other Democrat opponents. It was very obvious that she had some ties to war and making money off of war. But Judge Judy also went in on the liberals because things have gone too far in some of these liberal cities.
There is never an excuse for bad behavior. And when society started to make excuses for bad behavior and react to criminality based upon the excuses, it fell apart. It fell apart. You're just as dead if somebody 18 kills you or 17. You're just as dead. When you have elected district attorneys who don't know what their job is, they should go find another job, fill ice cream cones someplace, but don't ruin cities. And what's happened around New York City, Portland, San Francisco, you had district attorneys who didn't know what their job was. And the cities are ruined. People are leaving. That's what happens. So, what do I think? I think we better get smarter because before we get lost, permanently lost.
It's sad that we've got to a place today where you even got freaking Judge Judy coming on the freaking TV, doing all these little interviews with people talking about how now the criminals are seen as good guys, and the people going after these hardened criminals, in some cases killers, are seen as the bad guys for going after him. But then you want to waste all your time on hush money trial. Like, imagine how much time, resource, and money went into this. Let's go ahead and see what Judge Judy has to say about it.
Donald Trump was indicted in 4 separate cases, and his legal strategy was pretty clear. He wanted to push all of the trials past the election, which he succeeded in, with the exception, it appears he's going to succeed in, with the exception of the Manhattan hush money trial. That kind of effort to just use procedural motions, whatever, is that the justice system working, or is it the justice system being manipulated?
I would be happier as someone who owns property in Manhattan.
It's kind of funny that about asking this question, asking if the justice system is being manipulated, seeing as how the justice system was manipulated to even bring these cases in the first place. There's literal people sitting in jails waiting a trial for murder, and they bump Trump up to like the top of the list over those people. Did y'all know that? Out here in Fulton County, some people have been waiting for trial for upwards of 4 or 5 years for trial for, in some cases, murder. But no, Trump, they bumped him up immediately because they're trying to nail him before the election. That's manipulation, Chris.
If the district attorney of New York County would take care of criminals who are making it impossible for citizens to walk in the streets and use the subway, to use his efforts to keep those people off the street,
Facts.
than to spend $5 million or $10 million of taxpayers' money trying Donald Trump on this nonsense. That's my view.
Facts.
And
Cook
that is a
'em.
view that's shared by a lot of people, but they won't say it to you publicly because they'll say, oh, she must be a Trumpster. That's not true.
No, it don't, bull BS. A lot of people voted for Trump because of this nonsense. So even if they weren't a Trumpster before, they are now. Thanks, left wing. Thanks, radical left, BS fake news media. You done created Frankenstein, and now you can't kill him.
But I, as a taxpayer in this country, resent using the system for your own personal self-aggrandizement. Now, if you didn't know...
And that's what you think the DA did in
Absolutely.
Manhattan?
That's what I think. That's what I think. That's what I think.
Judge Judy, you don't think it. You know it. I think even the Democrats know it. Anybody who talk about, oh, nobody's above the law and all this stuff. I know there's certain people, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but I went to Bernie Sanders' Twitter. I was trying to see if he had something to say about it because at one point in his life, he was a man of principle. Believe it or not, for those who don't really know much about Sanders, besides being a tyrannical, well, he's a radical leftist. I don't know about tyrannical leftists, but he's certainly a radical leftist. And he hasn't really said anything. I can't find nothing that Bernie Sanders said about this. And a lot of politicians haven't really said anything about the Trump trials. I think it's because they know that it's BS. But I've lost all respect for these Democrat politicians because not enough of them, really none of them, are speaking out against what's happening to Trump. If you had any integrity as even a person and you even cared at all about our legal system, you would speak out about this. To think that, well, something happens to Trump once, it doesn't mean it's going to happen to anybody else, is foolish. Nonsense. That's like saying if somebody's a victim of domestic violence and they stay with the person, that person's never going to hit them again. They're never going to hit them again. It just happened one time. It's like, okay, if somebody cheats on you, they're not going to cheat again. It's just one time, maybe twice, like maybe 3. I mean, they're not going to keep doing it. It's foolish. If somebody bends you over the table and they go to town on you, best believe now they know who the boss is, and they're going to keep doing it until you put out a knife and then you take them out, okay? Hit them in the throat, and they can't do it no more. Unfortunately, that's really what it's going to take to stop these monsters. And I don't mean physically, before anybody gets crazy, says I'm advocating violence, because I'm not. But it's going to take hitting them back with the legal system. It's going to take reverse lawfare back on them. And then maybe we'll get to the point of decorum where this stops, or maybe it'll just destroy us all. There's only one way to find out. But I know one thing we ain't about to do is just sit up here and keep taking L's.
I mean, if you look, You had to twist yourself into a pretzel to figure out what the crime was.
Facts.
It was bad thinking on the part of Letitia James,
the Attorney General.
She wasn't thinking at all. This lady's a corrupt radical, campaign on trying to get Donald Trump. Like, who would think that that's a good idea? I'm gonna prosecute Donald Trump. I remember her little stupid butt and all them. What did she say? She was like, our politicians in Washington are too male, too pale, and too stale.
Stand up to an administration which is too male, too pale, and too stale.
I hope that it was a price that they really feel like is worth paying, because inevitably, if you guys know how this legal system tends to work, they're gonna come after them later. You know, they could change the laws. The Democrats literally changed the law in order for them to go after Trump for the whack job Carroll case. Okay, they literally changed the law so they could just overwrite what the statute of limitations is. So technically, Republicans could do the same thing to Democrats too. So if they want to go after Letitia James later, they could just change the statute of limitations. If they don't have anything soon, they could go after her later. Same thing for Alvin Bragg. Like, to think that you would do something so grandiose to a former president, likely to be the future president of the United States, and basically get away with it, especially something fraudulent and stupid as this hush money case, or in Letitia James' case, the civil fraud thing, like the excessive fine for that non-crime that was. A bunch of freaking nonsense. A bunch of nonsense, and it's something where they're easily going to say, hey, you guys are trying to interfere with the election, just outright. You guys were politically targeting an opponent, something that you shouldn't be allowed legally to do. Like, oh, I'm going to raise charges up against you, and I'm going to do it fast, and I'm going to overwrite everybody. I'm bumping you to the top of the list over everybody else, including people awaiting trial for murder. People out in the street getting their head bust, shot at, all kinds of stuff. But no, we think we want to go after Donald Trump because we just really, really don't like him. This is the type of people who we got in charge, and some of these radical leftists actually put these people in office. They had to be voted in. They love the idea of going after Donald Trump. This is why these people need to be defeated. This is why we need to vote. Early voting, mail-in voting, absentee voting, election day voting, whatever it takes. Even Judge Judy knows that this is wrong, is crazy. Now you even got the old school Judge Judy coming out of her cave, wherever she was at, whatever mansion she was living in, coming out of her cave doing interviews, saying that this is wrong, the country's going the wrong direction. This madness has to stop. Drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new. I appreciate you watching the Black Anomaly Rising channel. I'm out.
As a taxpayer in this country, resent using the system for your own personal self-aggrandizement.